He attended the conference to mock her career, but when she took the stage as the country's top civil rights lawyer with 3 beautiful mixed-race children, his prejudice turned into desperate regret. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The elevator ascended toward the penthouse of Trump Plaza, its luxurious confines contrasting sharply with Olivia Johnson's racing heart. Her right hand clutched a simple white envelope, trembling slightly despite her best efforts to appear composed. With her left, she smoothed the wrinkles from her navy blue dress, purchased on sale from Macy's 3 months ago, worn only twice before, including the night Maxwell had proposed. December in Manhattan had unleashed its full fury outside. Snow pelted against the glass exterior of the building, accumulating on ledges and transforming the city into a white expanse. The weather forecast had warned of 18 inches by morning, but Olivia had ventured out anyway. This conversation couldn't wait. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 68th floor. Olivia stepped into the private foyer, her sensible heels clicking against imported Italian marble. She had always felt like an imposter here, even after 3 years with Maxwell. Today, that feeling intensified. "He's in the living room, Ms. Johnson," said the housekeeper, her expression unreadable. Had she already been informed? Did she know this might be Olivia's last visit to the penthouse? "Thank you, Marisa." The spacious living room spread before her, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a panoramic view of Central Park, now transformed into a winter wonderland. Maxwell Whitmore III stood with his back to her, a tumbler of scotch in hand, watching the snowstorm rage. His posture, straight-backed, shoulders squared, spoke of generations of privilege and wealth. The Whitmore family had been American aristocracy since before the Revolution, their fortune built first on shipping, then railroads, now diversified across dozens of industries. "Maxwell," Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. He turned, and Olivia caught her breath. Even after 3 years, his classical good looks still affected her. Strong jaw, patrician nose, piercing blue eyes that seemed to run in his family for generations. Those same eyes now assessed her coldly. "You're late," he said simply. "The snow. I had to take the subway and then walk the last few blocks." Olivia stepped forward, still clutching the envelope. "The cabs weren't running." A flicker of distaste crossed his features. "You could have called my driver." "I needed time to think," she replied, then added with conviction, "We need to talk, Max." Maxwell gestured toward the Eames chair across from him, her usual spot, before settling into the leather sofa that probably cost more than her parents' entire home in Crown Heights. "I'm listening," he said, taking another sip of his drink. The diamond-studded Patek Philippe on his wrist caught the light as he moved. Olivia took a deep breath, crossing and uncrossing her ankles. 3 years at Bowman, Prescott, and Thames alongside Maxwell had trained her to present arguments calmly, logically, without emotion. But this wasn't a legal brief. This was their life. "I'm pregnant, Max. 2 months along." She extended the envelope, her hand still trembling. "It's triplets." Maxwell's expression remained unnervingly neutral as he accepted the envelope. He extracted the ultrasound image, studied it for precisely 5 seconds, then placed it on the Italian marble coffee table between them with the delicacy one might use for a piece of junk mail. "You really thought this would work?" His voice was soft, almost curious. "A little lawyer from Harlem trying to cash in on the Whitmore family fortune?" The words hit Olivia like physical blows. "Crown Heights," she corrected automatically. "I'm from Crown Heights, not Harlem, and we've known each other for 3 years, Max. We work at the same firm. We're engaged." A mistake I'm correcting now. Maxwell reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. He placed it next to the ultrasound. The 8-carat diamond ring, the one he'd presented to her 6 months ago at Le Bernardin, glinted mockingly in the soft lighting. "My parents were right all along. You're too ambitious, too black, too Brooklyn for the Whitmores of Boston." Olivia felt her face grow hot. "These babies are your children." Maxwell laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the high ceilings. "A black lawyer from Harlem carrying 3 mixed-race bastards has no place in my family, nor on the board of my company." He pressed a button on the intercom beside the sofa. "Security, please escort Ms. Johnson out of the building. She's no longer authorized to enter." "You can't be serious," Olivia whispered, the reality of the situation crashing down around her. "Max, we're having 3 babies. Our babies." "Correction, you're having 3 babies." His blue eyes were glacial. "I'm protecting my family legacy, as I always have." Within minutes, 2 burly security guards appeared at the entrance to the living room. Olivia recognized them, had greeted them by name every time she'd visited over the past 3 years. Now they avoided her eyes. "Mr. Whitmore," one of them said, "would you like us to call a taxi for the lady?" "That won't be necessary," Maxwell replied, turning his attention to his laptop. "She can take the subway as she always has." Humiliation burned through Olivia's body. She stood, straightening her dress with as much dignity as she could muster. The ultrasound still lay on the coffee table. She reached for it, but Maxwell's voice stopped her. "Leave it. I'll need proof for my lawyers." She withdrew her hand as if burned. As the security guards approached, Olivia turned one last time toward the man she had planned to marry, the father of her unborn children. "You'll regret this, Maxwell. One day you'll look back and realize that today was the biggest mistake of your life." Maxwell didn't even look up from his screen. "Goodbye, Olivia." The journey from Trump Plaza to her apartment in Crown Heights passed in a blur of subway cars, icy sidewalks, and silent tears that froze on her cheeks. The storm had intensified, and by the time Olivia climbed the 4 flights to her apartment, the elevator was broken again. She was soaked, frozen, and utterly exhausted. Inside, she leaned against the closed door and slowly slid to the floor. Her apartment felt impossibly small after the penthouse, a studio with a kitchenette, a bathroom with a cracked mirror, and a fold-out couch that served as her bed. But it was hers, paid for with her own salary from Bowman, Prescott, and Thames, at least until tomorrow, when Maxwell would undoubtedly ensure her termination. With numb fingers, Olivia emptied her knockoff Gucci bag, a gift from her mother, who believed it was authentic, and Maxwell had never known the difference. Her wallet contained $27, 3 tens, a 5, and 2 ones. It was all she had until payday, which was still 10 days away. The realization hit her with crushing force. She was pregnant with triplets, about to lose her job, with $27 to her name. She had no family wealth to fall back on, no trust fund to tap into. Her father had died when she was in law school, and her mother lived on a fixed income in Florida. Olivia dragged herself to the kitchenette, using her last dollar bill to purchase a packet of ramen noodles from the vending machine in the building's laundry room. As the water boiled on her hot plate, she caught her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her carefully straightened hair had frizzed in the snow. She looked nothing like the polished associate from Bowman, Prescott, and Thames who had left this apartment that morning. "You are Olivia Johnson," she told her reflection firmly. "Daughter of Malcolm Johnson, who cleaned bathrooms to pay for your education. Granddaughter of Dorothy Johnson, who marched with Martin Luther King while pregnant." She placed her hand over her still flat stomach. "We don't need him to be extraordinary." The next weeks unfolded with brutal efficiency, as if Maxwell had orchestrated every aspect of her downfall. On Monday morning, the HR director at Bowman, Prescott, and Thames informed her that due to budgetary constraints, her position was being eliminated. Through the glass walls of the conference room, she caught Maxwell watching from his corner office, his expression impassive. By Wednesday, her health insurance had been canceled. Administrative error, they claimed, though the termination date was precisely 1 day after her dismissal. On Friday, her landlord knocked on her door. "Rent's going up 30% next month," he informed her, not quite meeting her eyes. New owners bought the building. Nothing I can do. Olivia knew what that meant. The Whitmore Real Estate Group had recently been acquiring properties in gentrifying Brooklyn neighborhoods. This was no coincidence. She found 3 jobs: receptionist at a medical clinic during the day, bartender at night, and on weekends, freelance legal document reviewer. The pregnancy made each shift torture. Morning sickness wasn't confined to mornings, and the smell of alcohol at the bar made her rush to the bathroom between customers. At night, she collapsed onto her fold-out couch, too exhausted to even unfold it, sleeping in her clothes on the thin mattress. 3 weeks into this routine, Olivia fainted during her bartending shift. A tray of glasses shattered around her as she crumpled to the floor. When she came to, a concerned face hovered above her. "Don't move," the woman said. "I'm Dr. Patricia Rhodes. I'm a regular here." "I'm fine." Olivia tried to stand, but dizziness forced her back down. "You most certainly are not fine," Dr. Rhodes insisted. "I'm taking you home." In Olivia's apartment, Dr. Rhodes, a gynecologist as it turned out, checked her vital signs and asked pointed questions about her pregnancy. "You can't continue like this," the doctor said firmly, packing up her medical bag. "You're carrying 3 lives besides your own." "I don't have a choice," Olivia replied, tears threatening again. "The father, he doesn't want to know." Dr. Rhodes's expression softened. "There are always choices, dear. Just maybe not the ones we'd prefer." The next morning, a certified letter arrived from Whitmore Industries. Inside was a confidentiality agreement and an offer: $250,000 for medical expenses and maintenance, with the condition that she never reveal the paternity or contact any member of the Whitmore family. Olivia read the document 3 times, each paragraph burning into her memory. Then she went to the kitchen sink, struck a match, and watched the flame devour Maxwell's attempt to erase his children from existence. That evening, holding the test results confirming that all 3 babies were healthy despite her exhaustion, Olivia made a promise to herself and her unborn children. "Maxwell Whitmore rejected me because he thought I wasn't worthy of his world," she whispered, hand resting on her stomach. "I'm going to build a world where he wouldn't be worthy to enter." As she fell asleep that night, exhausted on her fold-out couch, Olivia couldn't possibly imagine that in 15 years she would be nominated to the Supreme Court, while the Whitmore empire crumbled under the weight of its own mistakes. In the weeks that followed Maxwell's rejection, winter tightened its grip on New York City, but the cold outside was nothing compared to the chill of reality settling into Olivia's bones. The morning sickness had evolved into an all-day affair, a constant reminder of the 3 lives growing inside her and the enormous responsibility that now rested solely on her shoulders. The small studio apartment in Crown Heights felt more like a prison than a home as Olivia huddled under her threadbare blanket, shivering despite the ancient radiator clanking and hissing in the corner. Her $27 had stretched to cover ramen noodles and crackers, but nutrition for 4 required much more. When the phone rang that morning, Olivia's heart leapt with hope. Perhaps the law firm had reconsidered. Perhaps Maxwell had. "Ms. Johnson, this is Margaret from Bowman, Prescott and Thames. I'm calling to inform you that there's been a decision regarding your severance package." Olivia sat up straighter. "Yes?" "The partners have determined that since your position was eliminated due to budgetary constraints and your employment period was under 5 years, no severance will be provided. Your final paycheck has been processed, covering your work through last Friday." The woman's voice remained professionally detached, but Olivia detected a hint of discomfort. Everyone at the firm knew she and Maxwell had been engaged. Everyone would soon realize why she'd been cut loose. "I understand," Olivia replied, maintaining her dignity. "Could you please confirm the status of my health insurance?" A pause. "It appears your coverage terminated effective yesterday. If you wish to continue under COBRA, the monthly premium would be $876. Almost her entire month's rent. Olivia thanked the woman and hung up, then sat motionless on the edge of her fold-out couch. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. By noon, Olivia had changed into her most professional outfit, a simple black pantsuit she'd purchased from a consignment shop when she'd first been hired at Bowman, and headed to a walk-in clinic in Flatbush that operated on a sliding scale. The nurse who took her vitals frowned at her blood pressure reading. "How far along are you, hon?" she asked, placing a gentle hand on Olivia's wrist. "About 10 weeks. It's triplets." The nurse's eyebrows shot up. "And you're here alone?" Olivia nodded, the simple question unexpectedly bringing tears to her eyes. "High-risk pregnancy specialists don't generally work at community clinics," the nurse said kindly. "But I'll see what we can do for you today." 3 hours and numerous tests later, Olivia left with a prescription for prenatal vitamins she couldn't afford and the name of a hospital program for underinsured expectant mothers. The walk home felt twice as long, her body already showing signs of the immense task it had undertaken. The knock on her door the following morning startled her. Her landlord, Mr. Kapoor, stood in the hallway, nervously adjusting his glasses. "Ms. Johnson, I hate to do this, but the new building owners are increasing rent across all units. Starting next month, your rent will be $1,400 instead of $950. Olivia's stomach dropped. "Mr. Kapoor, I've been a good tenant for 3 years. Can't you—" "I'm sorry. They were very clear. The neighborhood is transforming," he said, making air quotes with his fingers. "I'm just the messenger. If you can't afford it, they're offering a 2-month notice period." After he left, Olivia pulled out her laptop and searched for Whitmore Real Estate Group Crown Heights. The first result was a press release dated just 1 week ago. Whitmore Real Estate Group acquires multi-unit properties in emerging Brooklyn markets. The message couldn't have been clearer. Maxwell was systematically removing her from every aspect of the life she'd built. That afternoon, Olivia walked into a medical clinic in downtown Brooklyn with her resume in hand. "I saw your listing for a receptionist position," she told the office manager, carefully wearing a loose blouse that concealed her still subtle pregnancy. "You're overqualified," the woman said, scanning Olivia's credentials. "Law degree from Columbia? Why would you want this job?" "I'm between legal positions," Olivia replied smoothly, "and I need something stable while I consider my options." She was hired on the spot at $17 an hour, not enough to cover her new rent, but a start. That evening, she walked 6 blocks to the Copper Pot, a trendy bar catering to the first wave of gentrifiers in Crown Heights. "Experience?" asked the manager, a bearded man with sleeve tattoos. "None bartending," Olivia admitted, "but I'm a quick learner, good with people, and I can start immediately." He studied her for a moment. "Thursday through Saturday, 7 to close. Tips are good. You'll need to wear all black." By Sunday, Olivia had secured her third job, freelance legal document review for a small firm specializing in corporate compliance. The work was tedious and the pay meager, but she could do it from home on her laptop. The following weeks established a grueling routine. Mornings at the clinic, evenings at the bar, weekends hunched over her computer reviewing endless legal documents. The pregnancy made every hour a challenge. At the clinic, she hid her frequent bathroom breaks by volunteering to file paperwork in the back room. At the bar, she crafted elaborate signature mocktails for herself when customers insisted on buying the bartender a drink. The physical toll was immense. Her ankles swelled inside her sensible pumps. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. The weight of exhaustion pressed on her constantly. On a particularly busy Friday night at the Copper Pot, the sharp smell of tequila triggered a wave of nausea so violent that Olivia barely made it to the employee bathroom. As she knelt on the dirty floor, retching painfully, she heard a knock. "Olivia? It's Patricia Rhodes. May I come in?" Dr. Rhodes had become a regular at the bar, often stopping by after her shift at the hospital. She'd taken to sitting at Olivia's end of the bar, ordering a single glass of wine that she nursed all evening. Olivia suspected the doctor was keeping an eye on her, but pride had prevented her from acknowledging it. "I'm fine," Olivia called weakly, then promptly vomited again. The door opened anyway. Dr. Rhodes knelt beside her, holding back Olivia's hair and pressing a cool hand to her forehead. "You're running a fever," she said, "and you're dehydrated. This ends now." Too weak to protest, Olivia allowed herself to be led out through the back door. The manager looked concerned but didn't object when Dr. Rhodes informed him that his bartender was leaving early. Outside, the doctor helped Olivia into a sleek BMW and drove her not to the Crown Heights apartment, but to a stately brownstone in Bedford-Stuyvesant. "This is my home," Dr. Rhodes explained, guiding Olivia up the steps. "You need proper care tonight." Inside, Olivia was settled into a guest room with crisp sheets and a bathroom stocked with expensive toiletries. Dr. Rhodes brought a tray with dry toast, chamomile tea, and 2 pills. "Prescription prenatal vitamins," she explained, "not the over-the-counter kind. And before you object, consider it a gift for those 3 babies." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Dr. Rhodes sat on the edge of the bed. 20 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, same situation. Pregnant, alone, terrified. Someone helped me. Now, I'm helping you." In the morning, Olivia awoke to sunlight streaming through lace curtains. For a moment, she forgot the reality of her situation, the crushing weight of responsibility and uncertainty. Then her hand touched her slightly rounded belly, and it all came rushing back. Dr. Rhodes was in the kitchen, making pancakes. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, sliding a plate toward Olivia. "Better, thank you. I should get back to my apartment. I have documents to review by Monday." "First, we need to talk." Dr. Rhodes sat across from her, expression serious. "You can't continue working 3 jobs through a high-risk pregnancy. Your body won't allow it, and those babies deserve better." "I don't have a choice," Olivia said, the words catching in her throat. "The father. He made his position clear. He doesn't want anything to do with us." Dr. Rhodes nodded slowly. "Then we need to find you better options." When Olivia returned to her apartment that afternoon, a certified letter waited in her mailbox. The embossed gold letterhead of Whitmore Industries made her heart race. Inside was a legal document drafted by the firm's attorneys and a check for $250,000. The agreement was straightforward. In exchange for the money, Olivia would waive all rights to claim Maxwell Whitmore as the father of her children, never attempt to contact him or any member of his family, and maintain absolute confidentiality about their relationship. Olivia read each paragraph carefully, her legal training allowing her to see the loopholes and traps woven into the seemingly generous offer. This wasn't support, it was erasure. She carried the document to her tiny kitchen sink. With trembling fingers, she struck a match and held it to the corner of the paper. The flame caught quickly, consuming the expensive stationery and the insulting proposal it contained. She dropped the burning paper into the sink, watching as Maxwell's attempt to buy her silence turned to ash. That evening, Olivia sat in a small examination room at the community health center, watching the ultrasound screen as the technician moved the wand across her belly. 3 strong heartbeats, the woman confirmed. Despite everything, they're fighters. Later, alone in her apartment, Olivia taped the ultrasound image to her refrigerator door. 3 tiny forms, barely distinguishable as human yet, but already demonstrating the will to survive against the odds. She placed her palm against the grainy image. "Maxwell Whitmore rejected me because he thought I wasn't worthy of his world," she whispered fiercely. "I'm going to build a world where he wouldn't be worthy to enter." The next morning, Olivia called Dr. Rhodes. "I need advice," she said, "about going back to school while pregnant, about building something from nothing, about making a difference in the law that goes beyond corporate interests." As they talked, Olivia began sketching notes for what would eventually become the business plan for the Johnson Legal Group. She couldn't know then that her path from abandoned pregnant bartender to legal powerhouse would take less than a decade, or that the children growing inside her would become extraordinary in ways that would have made Maxwell Whitmore desperate to claim them, if only he'd been worthy. That evening, studying for the specialized law master's program she'd decided to pursue, Olivia didn't know that in less than a year she would give birth to 3 healthy children and find in Patricia Rhodes not just a mentor, but a lifeline that would transform both their futures. July 7, 2010 arrived with a relentless heat wave that baked the Brooklyn sidewalks and sent air conditioners straining citywide. Olivia Johnson, now 7 months pregnant with triplets, felt the weight of her expanded belly as she moved slowly through the medical clinic's reception area, one hand supporting her lower back, the other organizing patient files. "Ms. Johnson, you really should be sitting down," said Dr. Levine, the clinic's senior physician, pausing at the front desk. His eyes held genuine concern as he watched Olivia shuffle papers while balancing her enormous belly. "I'm fine, Dr. Levine," Olivia replied with a practiced smile. "Just a bit of back pain today." The truth was far worse than she let on. The contractions had started at dawn, mild at first, easily dismissed as Braxton Hicks, but growing steadily more insistent as the morning progressed. She'd calculated the timing between them during her subway ride to work, 17 minutes apart. Too early, too soon. The babies weren't due for another 8 weeks. As she reached for the ringing phone, a sharp pain knifed through her abdomen, stealing her breath. The receiver clattered to the floor as Olivia doubled over, clutching the edge of the desk. "Olivia?" Dr. Patricia Rhodes, who had just entered for her weekly volunteer shift, rushed forward. "How long have you been having contractions?" "Since this morning," Olivia gasped, perspiration beading on her forehead. "But it's too early, Patricia. They can't come now." Dr. Rhodes pressed her fingers to Olivia's wrist, counting her pulse. "Your water hasn't broken." "No, but—" Another contraction seized her, stronger than before. The pain radiated from her back to her belly in an agonizing wave. "We're going to the hospital. Now." Patricia's voice left no room for argument. She called over her shoulder, "Dr. Levine, Olivia's in active labor. I'm taking her to Mount Sinai." The next moments blurred together, Patricia guiding her to the BMW parked outside, the frantic drive through midday traffic, Patricia making calls to her obstetrical colleagues, preparing them for a high-risk premature delivery of triplets. "They're going to be fine," Patricia kept saying, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping Olivia's. "Mount Sinai has one of the best NICU units in the country." Olivia nodded, too focused on breathing through contractions to respond. Her mind raced with terrifying calculations. No health insurance, premature triplets, the astronomical bills that would follow. But overshadowing even these concerns was a more primal fear. Would her babies survive? The hospital entrance loomed ahead, and suddenly medical staff surrounded her, easing her into a wheelchair, rushing her through corridors. Patricia's calm voice cut through the chaos, providing medical history, pregnancy details, asserting her privilege as a staff physician to remain present. In the delivery room, monitors beeped steadily, tracking 3 separate heartbeats. The obstetrician on call, Dr. Wang, examined Olivia with practiced efficiency. "You're at 6 centimeters already. These babies are coming today." She looked up, meeting Olivia's frightened gaze. "I understand you're carrying triplets without a partner present?" "Yes." The word came out as barely more than a whisper. Dr. Wang nodded, her expression softening slightly. "You're in good hands. We deliver multiples every week. I'm going to recommend an epidural now to manage your pain and in case we need to perform an emergency C-section." The next hours passed in a haze of pain, medication, and controlled urgency. Nurses and doctors moved purposefully around her, their voices low and professional. Patricia remained a constant presence, sometimes holding Olivia's hand, sometimes conferring with the medical team in hushed tones. As the sun set outside the hospital windows, Dr. Wang announced, "It's time. Baby A is in position. On the next contraction, I need you to push." Olivia had never known such exhaustion or such determination. With Patricia supporting one shoulder and a nurse the other, she bore down with everything she had. "I can see the head," Dr. Wang announced. "One more push." At 7:32 p.m., Malcolm Johnson entered the world with a robust cry that belied his small size. Barely pausing to catch her breath, Olivia delivered Martin 7 minutes later. Maya arrived last, at 7:48 p.m., and the smallest of the three but with surprisingly strong lungs. "3 strong heartbeats," the neonatal specialist confirmed as each tiny infant was whisked to a waiting incubator. "They're fighters, Ms. Johnson." Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she caught glimpses of her children, so small, so perfect, so undeniably real. Each weighed just over 3 pounds, with skin nearly translucent and limbs impossibly delicate. Their faces bore the unmistakable stamp of their heritage. Brown skin a shade lighter than Olivia's, and even through the squinting newborn grimace, the distinctive Whitmore blue eyes that had captivated her the first time she'd met Maxwell. One by one, the nurses brought each swaddled infant to Olivia before transferring them to the NICU. She pressed her lips to each tiny forehead, whispering their names like prayers. "Malcolm Johnson, for my father who worked 3 jobs so I could go to college." A kiss to the first small brow. "Martin Johnson, for the man who inspired my father to dream beyond his circumstances." Another tender touch to her second son. "Maya Johnson, for my grandmother who taught me that women carry the future in their hands." A final kiss for her daughter. The nurse hesitated. "No middle names?" "No," Olivia said firmly. "Just Johnson." Another nurse appeared with forms. "We'll need information for the birth certificates. Father's name?" Olivia met the woman's eyes steadily. "There is no father, just us 4. The hours that followed were a blur of medical procedures, concerned discussions about lung development and feeding tubes, and the devastating reality of watching her newborns through the plastic walls of their incubators rather than holding them in her arms. Each tiny body was connected to monitors and IVs, fighting for the life they'd begun too soon. Patricia stayed long past her professional obligation, making calls to ensure Olivia received the best care despite her lack of insurance. It was past midnight when she finally convinced Olivia to rest. "The babies are stable," she assured her. "The NICU nurses have my number. Sleep now. You'll need your strength tomorrow." 2 weeks later, Olivia stood in the NICU, her hand reaching through the porthole of Maya's incubator, her finger clasped in her daughter's tiny grip. All 3 babies had surpassed initial expectations, breathing mostly on their own now, gaining precious ounces daily. "They're doing remarkably well," said Dr. Patel, the neonatologist. "If this progress continues, we might discuss going home in another 2 to 3 weeks." Home. The word hit Olivia like a physical blow. That morning, she'd found an eviction notice slipped under her apartment door, giving her 72 hours to vacate for non-payment of rent. The tripled medical shifts she'd been missing since delivery, the bartending job she'd lost, the legal document review she'd been too exhausted to complete, all had left her with precisely 0 income for the past 2 weeks. She'd avoided thinking about the hospital bill growing by thousands each day. Without insurance, the cost of delivering triplets prematurely and their extended NICU stay would likely exceed $500,000, a sum so astronomical it ceased to have meaning in her exhausted mind. "Ms. Johnson?" Dr. Patel was looking at her expectantly. "Did you hear what I said about the discharge planning?" "Yes, sorry," Olivia said quickly. 2 to 3 weeks. That's wonderful news." Later that evening, she returned to her apartment, stepping over the eviction notice into the small space that had been her home for 3 years. Pregnancy books and borrowed baby items cluttered every surface. 3 second-hand bassinets, donations from the clinic staff, stood ready beside her fold-out couch. None of it would matter if she had nowhere to put them. Olivia sank onto the couch, her body still recovering from the delivery, her mind overwhelmed by impossible choices. The buzzing of her phone jolted her from despair. "Olivia, it's Patricia. I'm outside your building. May I come up?" Minutes later, Patricia Rhodes stood in the center of the studio apartment, taking in the eviction notice Olivia had handed her wordlessly. "I suspected something like this might be happening," Patricia said. "You've been avoiding questions about your living situation." Olivia gestured helplessly around the cramped space. "I tried to prepare. I've been saving every penny, but the medical bills, the rent increase, the jobs I couldn't keep." Her voice broke. "They deserve better than this, than me." "Stop that right now." Patricia's tone was firm but kind. "Those 3 miracle babies deserve exactly you, the woman who's fought impossible odds to bring them safely into this world." She took a deep breath. "I have a proposal for you." She described her home in Bedford-Stuyvesant, a 3-story brownstone purchased 20 years earlier when the neighborhood was still considered dangerous. The entire 2nd floor had stood empty since her twin sons left for college 3 years ago. It's 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a small sitting room. Separate entrance if you want privacy, but kitchen privileges in my space. We could make it work, at least until you're back on your feet. Olivia stared at her, disbelieving. "You're offering me your home? Why?" Patricia smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Because 22 years ago I was a 3rd-year medical resident who got pregnant with twins. Their father, a surgical attending, told me to take care of it or kiss my career goodbye. My landlord evicted me when I couldn't make rent. A nurse I barely knew offered me her spare room until I found my footing." She reached for Olivia's hand. "Sometimes we all need a bridge to the other side." 2 days later, Patricia helped Olivia move what little she had into the spacious 2nd floor of the Bedford-Stuyvesant brownstone. The ceilings were high, the windows large, filling the rooms with afternoon light. Original hardwood floors gleamed beneath area rugs, and the walls were painted a soft cream that made the space feel open and calm. As Patricia carried in the last box, containing the folded bassinets, Olivia paused in the front sitting room, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her circumstances. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You don't need to," Patricia replied. "But if you insist, you can start by telling me about this." She pulled a crumpled magazine from her medical bag. "I found it in the waiting room at the clinic." Olivia's heart contracted painfully as she took the glossy Vanity Fair issue. On page 37, a society photo spread featured Maxwell Whitmore III and Catherine Spencer, daughter of Massachusetts Senator William Spencer, at the Museum of Modern Art Gala. Catherine's hand rested on Maxwell's arm, a massive diamond ring prominently displayed. The caption read, "Whitmore heir announces engagement to his first true love." The quote from Maxwell beneath the photo felt like acid. "Catherine is my first real love. I've never been truly committed to anyone before her." Olivia's legs gave way and she sank onto the window seat. The erasure was so complete, so deliberate. Not only had he abandoned her and their children, but he had erased their 3-year relationship from existence. "He proposed to me in front of 200 people at Le Bernardin," Olivia said quietly. "He gave speeches about our future together at the firm's holiday party. And now, according to Vanity Fair, I never existed." Patricia sat beside her. "What are you going to do?" Olivia looked up, something hardening in her expression as she gazed toward the room where 3 bassinets would soon hold her children. "I'm going to make sure that someday, when Maxwell Whitmore sees our children's names, he'll be the one who feels like he never existed." That night, with the bassinets assembled and waiting for their tiny occupants, Olivia opened her laptop and navigated to Columbia Law School's website. The specialized LLM program in civil rights and anti-discrimination law seemed to glow on the screen. The application deadline was just 2 weeks away. "I have a plan," she told Patricia over a cup of tea in the shared kitchen downstairs. "It will be difficult, but I need to do this. For them. For me." As Patricia listened, Olivia outlined her vision, continuing her legal education with a specialized focus, building expertise in civil rights litigation, eventually establishing her own practice dedicated to fighting the very type of corporate discrimination and abuse of power that Maxwell Whitmore represented. That quiet night in Bedford-Stuyvesant, with 3 newborns breathing softly in the NICU across the river, Olivia didn't know she was mapping out a path that would not only transform their lives but would also redefine American jurisprudence on discrimination, and eventually bring Maxwell Whitmore to his knees. 3 years passed like the changing of seasons, each day bleeding into the next in a blur of sleepless nights, endless studying, and the joyful chaos of raising triplets. Olivia's life had transformed entirely, her days now measured not in billable hours but in developmental milestones, feeding schedules and late-night study sessions that stretched until dawn. On a crisp autumn morning in 2013, Olivia sat at the kitchen table in Patricia's brownstone, her LLM diploma from Columbia newly framed beside her laptop. The triplets, now 3 years old, played on a colorful rug nearby, their chatter a soothing backdrop to her concentration as she reviewed case notes for her afternoon court appearance. "Mama, look!" Malcolm called, holding up a book with a proud smile. "I can read this whole page." Olivia glanced up, momentarily distracted from her preparation. "The whole page? Show me, sweetheart." Malcolm, already displaying the startling intelligence that would define him, began reading from the children's book with fluency that belied his 3 years. Olivia exchanged a look of amazement with Patricia, who stood preparing breakfast at the counter. They had never formally taught him to read. He had simply absorbed it, watching as Olivia studied legal texts while he sat in her lap. "That's remarkable," Patricia whispered as Malcolm continued, clearly understanding every word. "Have you considered having them tested? All 3 show signs of exceptional development." It was true. Martin had recently constructed a perfect replica of the Brooklyn Bridge from building blocks after seeing it only once during a weekend outing. Maya spoke in complete, complex sentences, negotiating with her brothers using persuasive language that made Olivia wonder if she had a future litigator on her hands. "I know they're advanced," Olivia acknowledged, gathering her papers into her briefcase. "But testing, special programs, all of that costs money we don't have yet." She checked her watch. "I should go. This housing discrimination case could be the breakthrough we need." The courtroom was crowded when Olivia arrived, her modest navy suit, purchased second-hand but meticulously tailored, a stark contrast to the expensive attire of the opposing counsel. She represented 6 families from a predominantly black apartment complex in Bedford-Stuyvesant who had been systematically overcharged, harassed, and eventually evicted when a new management company took over with plans to convert the building to luxury condominiums. "The plaintiffs will demonstrate a clear pattern of discrimination," Olivia argued, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. This was her first major case as lead counsel since completing her specialized LLM while working as a legal assistant at a small public interest firm. The defendants targeted long-term tenants of color with frivolous lease violations while offering incentives to new white applicants. As she presented evidence, meticulous documentation of disparate treatment spanning 18 months, Olivia felt someone watching her intently from the gallery. A quick glance revealed a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit, his expression thoughtful as he took notes. She refocused on her argument, pushing aside the distraction. 2 hours later, the judge ruled in favor of her clients, awarding compensatory damages that, while modest by corporate standards, would change her clients' lives. The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration as Olivia gathered her materials, her hands trembling slightly with the adrenaline of victory. "Impressive work, counselor," said a deep voice beside her. It was the man from the gallery extending his hand. "James Rhodes. I'm with the City Council's Civil Rights Division." "Olivia Johnson," she replied, accepting his handshake. "Rhodes. Any relation to Dr. Patricia Rhodes?" His smile broadened. "My cousin. She's mentioned you and your children. In fact, she suggested I might be interested in your approach to housing discrimination cases." He handed her a business card. "I'd like to discuss a potential partnership on some upcoming litigation. Perhaps dinner sometime this week?" 3 days later, They met at a small Italian restaurant in Fort Greene. James Rhodes proved to be not only a brilliant legal mind but also a thoughtful listener as Olivia described her vision for impact litigation targeting systematic discrimination. "The individual cases matter," she explained passionately, "but the real change happens when we force institutional reform through strategic litigation." "I couldn't agree more," James replied, his dark eyes reflecting genuine interest. "The Civil Rights Division has resources but lacks your particular insight and approach. I think we could accomplish something significant together." As weeks passed, their professional collaboration deepened. James began stopping by Patricia's brownstone to discuss cases, gradually staying longer to play with the triplets, who immediately took to his gentle humor and infinite patience. Martin would show him increasingly complex structures built from blocks, while Malcolm asked endless questions about the law that James answered with the same seriousness he would give an adult. Maya simply claimed his lap whenever possible, declaring him her friend. On a snowy evening in December, as Olivia prepared the triplets for bed, Malcolm looked up from his advanced picture book and asked the question she had been dreading. "Mama, why don't we have a daddy like Zach and Emma?" His blue eyes, so like Maxwell's, were filled with innocent curiosity. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, gathering all three children close. Some families have a mommy and daddy, some have two mommies or two daddies, and some, like us, have just one parent. "But we had a daddy once?" Martin pressed, always the most perceptive of the three. Olivia took a deep breath. "Yes, you had a biological father, but he wasn't ready to be a parent when you were born." "He didn't love us?" Malcolm's voice was small. "He didn't know you," Olivia answered truthfully, pulling them closer. "And that was the greatest loss he could ever suffer, not yours. Because you three are the most extraordinary gifts in this world." Later that night, after tucking the children in, Olivia found Patricia and James in the kitchen, clearly having overheard the conversation. "You handled that beautifully," Patricia said, squeezing her hand. James nodded in agreement. "They're lucky to have you." The following spring brought a pivotal opportunity. Olivia received a call from Tanner, Williams & Shaw, a prestigious corporate law firm with a growing pro bono division. "We've been impressed with your work on several discrimination cases," said the hiring partner. "We'd like to offer you an associate position, starting at $180,000 per year, with partnership track." The offer was staggering. More money than Olivia had ever imagined earning, enough to move her family into their own apartment, to start college funds for the triplets, to finally feel secure. That evening she discussed the opportunity with James during their regular run through Prospect Park, the spring air filled with the scent of new blooms. "It's an incredible offer," James acknowledged as they paused by the lake, catching their breath. "The security alone would be life-changing for you and the kids." Olivia watched a family of ducks glide across the water, considering her response. "It would be, but I'd be working within a system designed to protect corporate interests, even in their pro bono division." "You're thinking of declining?" James sounded surprised. "I'm thinking of starting my own practice," Olivia replied, the idea crystallizing as she spoke it aloud. "Focused exclusively on civil rights and discrimination cases. Small at first, just me, taking contingency cases and building from there." James studied her face, something shifting in his expression. "You're extraordinary, you know that?" Without warning, he leaned forward and kissed her gently. "I've wanted to do that for months," he admitted as he pulled away. 2 weeks later, as they enjoyed a simple picnic in Prospect Park with the triplets, James reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. But before opening it, he turned to the children. "Malcolm, Martin, Maya, can you help me with something very important?" he asked, his voice solemn. The triplets gathered around, eyes wide with curiosity as James revealed a modest but elegant diamond ring. "I would like to ask your mother to marry me, but I wanted to ask your permission first." The children's enthusiasm was immediate and unanimous. all three helping to hold the ring as James formally proposed. Olivia, tears streaming down her face, accepted without hesitation. That summer, Olivia declined the corporate offer and instead rented a small office in downtown Brooklyn. The space was humble, one room with 2 desks, a single computer, and a determined spirit. The sign on the door, installed with ceremony as the triplets watched, read, "Johnson Legal Group, accessible justice, powerful representation." Her first client was a group of custodial workers facing wage theft from a commercial cleaning company. The case was complex, the opposition well-funded, but Olivia poured everything she had learned into her preparation, working late into the night after the children were asleep. 6 months later, she won her first significant judgment, $300,000 in back wages and penalties, plus a precedent-setting ruling about contractor classification that would protect thousands of similar workers. On the evening of that victory, Olivia stood at the window of her small office, the triplets playing quietly at her feet as she gazed toward the Manhattan skyline. The lights of the financial district glittered in the distance, including the imposing tower that housed Whitmore Industries. "One day they'll see us," she whispered, one hand resting on Maya's curly head. She couldn't know then that in just 7 years, the Johnson Legal Group would occupy 3 floors of a midtown skyscraper, or that her cases would permanently alter the American legal landscape on discrimination law. The small office in downtown Brooklyn that had once seemed so spacious now buzzed with purposeful energy as the Johnson Legal Group expanded to accommodate its growing caseload. 3 years had passed since Olivia had turned down the corporate offer, and her decision had proven prophetic. What began as a one-woman operation had grown into a team of 7 dedicated attorneys, each specializing in different aspects of discrimination law. "Team meeting in 5 minutes," Olivia called, passing through the main workspace where associates huddled over case files and spoke quietly into phones. She paused at her office door, taking in the scene with quiet pride. The journey had been arduous. Countless sleepless nights, financial gambles, and moments of doubt, but witnessing her vision materialize made every sacrifice worthwhile. The conference room quickly filled with her team: Jamal, an experienced employment discrimination specialist; Sophia, who handled housing cases; Raphael, their education rights expert; and 3 recent law school graduates who brought fresh passion to their work. Olivia, now 34 and carrying herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had built something meaningful from nothing, took her place at the head of the table. "Before we discuss current cases," she began, "I want to share some news. The housing discrimination class action against Riverfront Management has been approved. We're officially representing 123 families." A murmur of excitement passed through the room. It was their largest case to date. A systematic targeting of Black and Latino tenants in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. The potential settlement could transform their small firm into a significant player in civil rights litigation. Later that morning, Olivia stood at the entrance to the Brooklyn Academy for Gifted Children, watching as her triplets, now 6 years old, adjusted their uniform blazers before their first day. The testing she had once hesitated to pursue had revealed what she and Patricia had long suspected. Malcolm, Martin, and Maya possessed extraordinary intellectual gifts. "Remember what we talked about," Olivia said, kneeling to straighten Malcolm's tie. "Being smart isn't about showing off, it's about using your gifts to help others." Malcolm nodded solemnly, his blue eyes, the one feature that still painfully reminded her of Maxwell, serious beyond his years. "I know, Mama, like how you help people who are treated unfairly." Martin fidgeted with the building block in his pocket, a habit he'd developed, always keeping one small piece with him for comfort. "Will the other kids be like us?" "They'll be gifted in different ways," Olivia explained. "Some in math like you, some in language like Maya, some in other areas. The important thing is to be kind." Maya, already demonstrating the confident eloquence that would later make her a formidable debater, took her brother's hands. "We'll stay together, right? The Johnson 3? "Always," the boys echoed in unison. As Olivia watched them walk through the academy doors, matching backpacks bobbing in sync, a lump formed in her throat. Despite all the challenges, she had managed to provide them with opportunities she could once only dream of, though not without significant help from Patricia, who had refused to accept rent for 3 years, and James, whose support had been unwavering. Just a month into the school year, Olivia received a call from Malcolm's math teacher requesting an immediate meeting. Her heart sank, assuming problems with adjustment or behavior. Instead, she found herself facing an enthusiastic educator who could barely contain his excitement. "Ms. Johnson, in 20 years of teaching gifted children, I've never encountered mathematical intuition like Malcolm's," the teacher explained, spreading out papers covered in equations far beyond first-grade level. "He completed our standard assessment in minutes, then solved problems we give to our 5th graders." 2 weeks later, similar meetings followed for Martin and Maya. Martin's spatial reasoning and engineering instincts had led him to correct the design of a classroom model bridge, improving its stability using principles he shouldn't have understood at his age. Maya had stunned her language arts teacher by winning an impromptu debate against 3rd graders, constructing arguments with the precision of someone much older. "They need to be advanced," each teacher recommended. "Holding them back would be detrimental to their development." That evening, as Olivia shared these developments with James over dinner at their favorite neighborhood restaurant, his face lit up with pride that matched her own. "They're extraordinary," he said, reaching for her hand across the table. "Just like their mother." Olivia smiled, but uncertainty clouded her expression. "I worry about pushing them too fast. They're still babies in so many ways." "They have something most gifted children don't," James replied. "A mother who understands that emotional intelligence matters as much as academic brilliance." He hesitated, then added, "Speaking of extraordinary achievements, I have some news of my own." He slid a campaign button across the table. Simple blue text on white read, "James Rhodes for City Council." "You're running?" Olivia's eyes widened. "The 35th district seat is opening up. My colleagues at the Civil Rights Division think I have a real chance." His expression grew serious. "But I wouldn't do it without your support. You and the kids are my priority." Olivia considered the implications. James's campaign would mean public scrutiny, less private time together, more responsibilities falling on her shoulders. Yet the possibility of having someone with James's integrity in public office, someone who truly understood systemic discrimination, was too important to dismiss. "We're with you," she said finally. 100%. In the months that followed, Olivia balanced her growing legal practice with unofficial duties as James's strategic advisor. Late nights in their kitchen turned into strategy sessions, with Olivia applying her legal mind to campaign messaging while the triplets slept upstairs. The small campaign announcement at a community center in Bedford-Stuyvesant drew a modest crowd of neighbors, civil rights activists, and local business owners. Olivia stood proudly beside James as he outlined his vision for more equitable housing policies and police accountability. Malcolm, Martin, and Maya, dressed in their Sunday best, charmed potential voters with their precocious understanding of their soon-to-be stepfather's platform. "My James will make sure everyone gets treated fairly," Maya told an elderly woman who bent to admire her dress. "That's what our family does." As autumn turned to winter, Olivia found herself immersed in the most challenging case of her career to date. A former employee of Meridian department stores had approached the Johnson Legal Group with evidence of systematic discrimination against Black employees, denied promotions, harsher discipline for minor infractions, and eventual termination based on fabricated performance issues. Night after night, Olivia pored over personnel records, internal memos, and performance evaluations, building a case that went beyond individual grievances to expose a corporate culture of discrimination. With the children asleep and James often at late campaign events, she spread documents across the dining table, constructing a timeline of discriminatory practices spanning 5 years. It was during this painstaking review that Olivia made a discovery that sent ice through her veins. Buried in the corporate ownership documents was a subsidiary holding company, WM Retail Holdings, that owned a controlling interest in Meridian's parent company. A quick search confirmed her suspicion. WM Retail Holdings was a shell company owned by Whitmore Industries. Maxwell was behind this. Olivia sat back in her chair, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. For the first time in her career, a case had unexpectedly connected to her past, to the man who had rejected her and their children. The temptation to make it personal, to use this case as a vehicle for long-simmering revenge, flashed through her mind. "No," she whispered to the empty room, "this is bigger than us." The next morning, she called a private meeting with her legal team. "I have a potential conflict of interest with Whitmore Industries," she explained carefully. "I'll direct our strategy, but Jamal will take the lead in court and negotiations. This case needs to be about the victims, not about me." The litigation against Meridian department stores unfolded over 8 grueling months. Olivia worked tirelessly behind the scenes, crafting arguments and anticipating defense strategies, while Jamal became the public face of the case. As evidence mounted and more employees came forward, Meridian's attorneys grew increasingly desperate. "This isn't just a case of discrimination," Olivia coached Jamal before his closing argument. "It's a systematic pattern that reveals corporate values. Make the jury see that." In the courtroom, seated quietly in the gallery while Jamal delivered a powerful summation, Olivia watched the jury's faces. They were engaged, disturbed by the evidence, moved by the testimony of employees whose careers and lives had been damaged by Meridian's practices. The verdict came back after just 6 hours of deliberation. $12 million in damages to be distributed among 200 former employees, plus mandatory changes to hiring, promotion, and discipline practices across all Meridian stores. The headline in the New York Times the next morning read, "Brooklyn attorney wins landmark discrimination case against retail giant." Though Jamal was quoted extensively, the article noted that the Johnson Legal Group, founded by Columbia Law graduate Olivia Johnson, has quickly established itself as a formidable advocate for victims of institutional discrimination. What the article didn't mention, what no one in the press knew, was the satisfaction Olivia felt knowing that somewhere in a Manhattan high-rise, Maxwell Whitmore was receiving reports about a costly legal defeat engineered by the woman he had once dismissed as too ambitious, too black, too Brooklyn. The victory celebration coincided with election night for James. Supporters packed a community center in Fort Greene as results trickled in, the mood growing increasingly jubilant as James's lead widened. "The next city council member from the 35th district," the campaign manager announced just after 11, "James Rhodes." The room erupted as James took the stage, pulling Olivia and the triplets up with him. "None of this would be possible without my partner in all things," he said, his arm around Olivia's waist. "She fights for justice in the courtroom while pushing me to be better every day." 1 week later, Olivia signed a lease for an entire floor in a commercial building in downtown Brooklyn. The expanded office would accommodate their growing team and the influx of cases that followed the Meridian victory. As she toured the space with the real estate agent, Olivia couldn't help but compare it to her first tiny office just 3 years earlier. The final stop on their house-hunting journey was a Victorian brownstone in Fort Greene with a small garden in back and separate bedrooms for each child. As James and Olivia stood on the porch that evening, looking out at the neighborhood they would soon call home, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. "From your fold-out couch in Crown Heights to this," James said softly, his arm around her shoulders, "you've built something remarkable, Olivia." She leaned into him, watching the triplets explore the garden in the fading light. "We're just getting started," she replied, her eyes fixed on the distant skyline of Manhattan, where challenges and opportunities awaited, including, though she didn't know it yet, a case that would bring her face to face with Maxwell Whitmore for the first time in 7 years. The skyline of Manhattan gleamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Johnson Legal Group's new downtown Brooklyn office. Olivia stood silently, taking in the view that represented so much more than geography. It was the distance she had traveled from that snowy night 7 years ago when Maxwell had cast her out. The expanded space hummed with activity as her team of 11 attorneys prepared for their most ambitious case yet. "The files from the tech company whistleblower just arrived," announced Sophia, placing a heavy box on Olivia's desk. "You might want to see these right away." Olivia nodded, pulling the first stack of documents from the box. Tech Fusion, a rapidly growing software company recently acquired by Whitmore Industries, stood accused of systematic discrimination against employees of color. The plaintiff, a former HR director, had meticulously documented years of concerning patterns: qualified black candidates mysteriously failing final interviews, promotions consistently going to less qualified white employees, and a toxic culture of casual racism disguised as cultural fit assessments. Hours later, as sunset painted Brooklyn in amber hues, Olivia discovered the first email from Maxwell. Her breath caught as his name appeared on the screen, the familiar Whitmore Industries signature block beneath a message to Tech Fusion's CEO. "The demographic concerns you raised require immediate attention. Our brand caters to a specific clientele with certain expectations about our corporate image. Hire fewer of them. They don't fit our culture." Olivia's fingers tightened around the edge of her desk. The language was carefully coded, but the intent was unmistakable, especially in context with the HR director's other evidence. She scrolled further, finding a dozen more emails in which Maxwell weighed in on hiring decisions, always pushing for candidates who reflect our customer base or maintain the company aesthetic. Her phone rang, James's name lighting up the screen. "How late will you be tonight?" he asked when she answered, the sounds of the Triplets playing in the background warming her heart. "Another hour, maybe 2, she replied, her eyes still fixed on Maxwell's emails. "I found something significant in the Tech Fusion case." "Anything I should know about?" Olivia hesitated. "It's directly linked to Maxwell Whitmore. He personally directed discriminatory hiring practices." A pause on the line. "Are you going to lead this one?" She took a deep breath, recognizing the dangerous pull of making this case personal. "No, I'm going to have Marcus take point. I'll direct strategy, but I need to keep some distance." "That's probably wise," James agreed. "This is about justice for the plaintiffs, not my history with Maxwell," she finished. "I know, this is bigger than us." After hanging up, Olivia called Marcus into her office, explaining her decision to have him lead the case while omitting her personal connection to Whitmore Industries. "This case could be transformative," she told her most experienced litigator, "but it needs to be about the plaintiffs, not about the attorneys." The following weekend, as spring sunshine filled the Fort Greene brownstone they now called home, Olivia sat cross-legged on the playroom floor, watching the Triplets engage in their favorite activities. At 7 years old, they were increasingly curious about the world and their place in it. "Mama," Maya said, looking up from her book, "Zoe at school has a daddy who picks her up every Wednesday, and Caleb has 2 daddies, but we only have you and James." Olivia had been expecting this conversation, had prepared for it, yet the reality of it still made her heart ache. Malcolm and Martin abandoned their building project, clearly interested in the discussion. "Come here, all of you," she said softly, patting the space beside her on the colorful rug. They gathered around, 6 blue eyes, Maxwell's eyes, focused intently on her face. Olivia took a deep breath, determined to be honest without burdening them with anger or bitterness. "You have a biological father," she began carefully. "When I told him I was pregnant with you 3, he made a choice. He wasn't ready to be a father." "Didn't he want us?" Malcolm asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. "He didn't know you," Olivia answered truthfully, pulling them closer. "He never got to see how amazing you are, how kind and brilliant and wonderful, and that was his loss, the biggest mistake of his life." "Does he know about us now?" Martin asked, always the most analytical of the three. "No, sweetheart. He made his choice to not be part of our family." "But now we have James," Maya said, seeking reassurance. "Yes, we have James, who loves you very much." "And Aunt Patricia," Malcolm added. "And our whole family at the law firm," Martin continued. Olivia smiled, blinking back tears at their resilience. "That's right. Family isn't just about biology. It's about who loves you, who shows up for you, who builds a life with you." Later that night, Olivia found James and Patricia in the kitchen, having clearly overheard the conversation. "You handled that beautifully," Patricia said, squeezing her shoulder. "They deserve the truth," Olivia replied, "just not the ugly parts. Not yet." As the tech fusion case progressed through discovery, Olivia maintained her behind-the-scenes role, reviewing every document, preparing Marcus for depositions, and crafting the legal strategy. When Maxwell's deposition was scheduled, she deliberately planned to be in Washington, D.C. that day, meeting with potential clients. "Are you sure you don't want to be there?" James asked the night before as they prepared for bed. After everything he did, seeing him under oath might be satisfying, Olivia finished. "Maybe, but also distracting. This case isn't about my closure. It's about justice for people who were denied opportunities because of their race." The spring months flew by, the tech fusion litigation moving steadily toward trial as the firm took on other cases, and James established himself as a rising voice on the city council. The triplets finished second grade with extraordinary marks, each advanced in different subjects that showcased their unique gifts. On a warm evening in June, James took Olivia for a run through Prospect Park, their regular routine now that their lives had grown increasingly busy. "I've been thinking," he said as they paused by the lake to catch their breath. "Maybe it's time we made this official." Before Olivia could respond, he dropped to one knee, producing a small velvet box from his running shorts. "Olivia Johnson, you've built an extraordinary life against impossible odds. Would you do me the honor of building the rest of it together?" The ring was modest but elegant, its simple design reflecting James's understanding that Olivia valued substance over flash. Unlike the ostentatious 8-carat diamond Maxwell had given her, a branded statement of ownership rather than partnership, this ring represented something genuine. "Yes," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as James slipped it onto her finger. 1,000 times yes. The following weekend, they arranged a special picnic in the park with the triplets. James formally asked for their permission to marry their mother, presenting each child with a small gift symbolizing his commitment to them as well. Their enthusiastic approval, complete with group hugs and Maya's impromptu speech about family, sealed the moment perfectly. As July approached, bringing with it the final preparations for the tech fusion trial, an unexpected development changed everything. Whitmore Industries attorneys requested a settlement conference. "They're scared," Marcus reported after the initial meeting. "The evidence is too strong, and they don't want Maxwell Whitmore testifying in open court." The proposed settlement was substantial, $30 million in compensation for affected employees, plus mandatory structural changes to hiring and promotion practices. Most significantly, the agreement required independent monitoring of all Whitmore Industries subsidiaries for compliance with anti-discrimination laws for 5 years. "What do you think?" Marcus asked as the legal team gathered in the conference room to discuss the offer. Olivia considered the proposal carefully. "It's comprehensive. The monetary compensation is fair, and the structural changes have real teeth." She tapped her pen against the document. "But I want to know why they're so eager to settle now, just weeks before trial." The answer came from their paralegal, who had been monitoring financial news. "Whitmore Industries is negotiating a major government contract. A discrimination trial would likely tank those negotiations." Olivia smiled, recognizing the leverage they now possessed. "Let's counter at $35 million and ask for 7 years of monitoring instead of 5. 2 days later, Whitmore Industries accepted the amended terms without further negotiation. As Olivia watched the company representative sign the agreement, visibly relieved that Maxwell wouldn't need to testify, she felt not the sharp satisfaction of revenge but the steadier gratification of justice properly served. The settlement made headlines in business journals and legal publications, establishing the Johnson Legal Group as a formidable opponent to corporate discrimination. What none of the articles mentioned, what no one outside Olivia's closest circle knew, was that this was merely the opening move in a long game. Each case against Whitmore Industries' subsidiaries built precedent, created paper trails, and revealed patterns that would eventually lead to the parent company itself. On a perfect September afternoon, Olivia and James were married in a small ceremony at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. The triplets played central roles, Maya as flower girl, Malcolm carrying the rings, and Martin giving a surprisingly eloquent toast at the reception. Patricia, who had become family in every sense that mattered, stood as Olivia's matron of honor. As they shared their first dance as husband and wife, James whispered, "I'm the luckiest man alive." Olivia smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought her here, from that devastating night in Maxwell's penthouse to this moment of authentic joy. "We built this," she replied, looking toward the triplets laughing with their friends. "All of it." That evening, after the celebration had ended and the children were asleep, Olivia sat at her desk reviewing the Forbes magazine that had arrived that day. Her profile in the business section, titled "The New Face of Impact Social Advocacy," featured a professional photograph of her in front of the Johnson Legal Group offices. The article detailed her firm's growth, their groundbreaking cases, and their unique approach to using litigation as a tool for systemic change. As she flipped through the pages, Olivia couldn't help but wonder if Maxwell would see it, if he would recognize her name and realize what she had built in the 7 years since he had dismissed her as too Brooklyn for his world. As she placed the magazine on her nightstand, Olivia had no way of knowing that 3 years later she would be arguing before the Supreme Court of the United States in a case that would fundamentally change American anti-discrimination laws and place Whitmore Industries directly in her crosshairs. As Olivia placed the Forbes magazine on her nightstand, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. The profile piece represented more than professional recognition. It was tangible proof of how far she had come since that snowy December night. Yet even as she celebrated this milestone, she couldn't have anticipated how dramatically her life would transform over the next 2 years. The summer of 2020 arrived with unprecedented challenges. A global pandemic forced the Johnson Legal Group to adapt quickly, transitioning to remote operations while continuing to represent clients whose discrimination claims had only intensified during the crisis. Olivia, working from the home office in their Fort Greene brownstone, led her team through virtual strategy sessions while helping the triplets adjust to remote learning. "Mom, look what I made!" Malcolm called one morning, rushing into her office during a brief break between video conferences. At 12 years old, he had grown tall and lanky, his blue eyes bright with excitement as he presented his laptop. On the screen was a complex algorithm flowchart, color-coded and meticulously organized. "It's a program that analyzes hiring data to detect discrimination patterns," he explained, scrolling through pages of code. "It flags statistical anomalies that might indicate bias." Olivia stared at the screen, amazed not just by the sophisticated programming, but by her son's intuitive understanding of how discrimination operated within systems. "Malcolm, this is extraordinary. How did you even think of this?" He shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I heard you talking about that manufacturing company case, how hard it was to prove they were filtering out applicants with ethnic-sounding names. I thought maybe computers could spot patterns humans might miss." Before she could respond, Martin appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "Mom, can I show you something too?" While Malcolm's gifts leaned toward mathematics and pattern recognition, Martin had developed a profound interest in practical applications of technology. His tablet displayed the prototype for a mobile application he called Justice in Hand. It helps people without lawyers understand their rights, he explained, demonstrating how users could navigate through various scenarios: housing discrimination, workplace harassment, police encounters, and receive guidance in multiple languages. Most people don't know when their rights are being violated or what to do about it. Olivia pulled both boys into a tight embrace, overcome with pride. You're both using your gifts exactly the way I'd hoped, to help others. Later that evening, as James helped Maya prepare for an upcoming virtual debate competition, Olivia marveled at how their family had flourished despite, or perhaps because of, the challenges they had faced. James had become not just a respected city council member, but a true father to the triplets, supporting their unique talents while teaching them the value of public service. The topic is whether standardized testing perpetuates systemic inequality, Maya explained, her articulate presentation belying her 12 years. I'm arguing that it does, using historical data on test design and access disparities. James nodded approvingly. Your structure is solid, but remember what we discussed about emotional appeal. Facts persuade the mind, but stories move people to action. Maya considered this, then smiled, the same determined smile Olivia saw in the mirror. Like how Mom tells stories about real people in her closing arguments. Exactly, James confirmed, catching Olivia's eye with a proud glance. By autumn, as the world struggled to find a new normal, the Johnson Legal Group had not only survived but expanded, opening satellite offices in Washington, D.C. and Chicago to handle their growing national caseload. Olivia's reputation as a civil rights litigator had spread beyond New York, attracting clients who had previously believed justice was beyond their reach. The firm's downtown Brooklyn headquarters now occupied an entire floor, with 35 attorneys specializing in different aspects of discrimination law. Olivia's corner office, with its panoramic views of Manhattan, served as a daily reminder of her journey from that small studio apartment in Crown Heights. On a crisp October morning, Jamal Williams was shown into her office, his expression solemn. The 40-year-old subway maintenance worker had been stopped by police 17 times in 2 years, despite having no criminal record. The most recent encounter had escalated to physical violence, leaving him with 3 broken ribs and trauma that made returning to work impossible. Every lawyer I talked to said the same thing, Jamal explained, hands clasped tightly in his lap. Cases against the NYPD rarely succeed. They've got qualified immunity, union protection, the blue wall of silence. Olivia studied the detailed documentation he had brought, meticulous records of each stop, witness statements, medical reports, and performance reviews from his 15 years of unblemished MTA service. This isn't just about your case, Mr. Williams, she said finally. This is about a pattern that affects thousands of black and brown New Yorkers every day. She met his gaze directly. Taking this on means challenging not just individual officers but an entire system. It will be difficult, possibly dangerous, and certainly expensive for our firm. So you won't take it? His shoulders slumped with resignation. On the contrary, Olivia replied, extending her hand. The Johnson Legal Group will represent you. This case could change everything, not just for you, but for our city. That evening, as she discussed the decision with James over dinner after the children had gone to bed, he expressed both support and concern. Williams versus City of New York could be a landmark case, he acknowledged, but the political blowback will be intense. Police unions, city officials, conservative media, they'll all come after you. Olivia nodded, aware of the risks. This case matters. It's exactly the kind of structural challenge we founded the firm to take on. She squeezed his hand. It's risky, but necessary. The next 18 months transformed Olivia's professional life as the Williams case moved through the judicial system. The initial victory in district court was appealed by the city, then elevated to the federal circuit court, where another favorable ruling prompted the city to petition the Supreme Court. The morning Olivia received notice that the Supreme Court had granted certiorari, agreeing to hear the case, The triplets found her sitting motionless at the kitchen island, the official letter in her hands. "Mom, what's wrong?" Maya asked, immediately sensing the gravity of the moment. "Nothing's wrong," Olivia replied softly. "I'm going to argue before the Supreme Court." The preparation was all-consuming. Olivia assembled a team of constitutional scholars, former Supreme Court clerks, and civil rights attorneys to help craft arguments that would not only win for Jamal Williams, but establish new precedent for police accountability nationwide. Night after night, she conducted moot courts, practiced responses to potential questions, and refined her approach to address both liberal and conservative justices effectively. Through it all, her family remained her anchor. The triplets, understanding the historical significance of their mother's work, developed their own routines to support her. Malcolm creating statistical analyses of similar cases, Martin compiling research into an accessible digital format, Maya helping Olivia practice articulating complex legal concepts in clear, persuasive language. On the morning of oral arguments, the family traveled together to Washington, D.C. As they approached the imposing marble steps of the Supreme Court building, Olivia felt the weight of history, not just the nation's, but her own. From a pregnant woman abandoned in a snowstorm to an advocate standing before the highest court in the land, her journey embodied both personal triumph and the ongoing American struggle for equality. Inside the magnificent courtroom, Olivia approached the lectern with steady confidence. Looking up at the 9 justices, she began not with abstract legal theory, but with Jamal Williams's reality. "This case is not merely about one man's experience," she stated, her voice clear and resonant in the hushed chamber. "It is about whether our Constitution's promises extend equally to all Americans, regardless of the color of their skin." For the next hour, Olivia parried complex questions, cited precedents, and articulated a vision of equal protection that challenged the court to live up to its highest ideals. When Chief Justice Roberts thanked her at the conclusion of her argument, the subtle nods from several justices suggested her performance had made an impact. 3 months later, the decision arrived. A 7-2 ruling in favor of Williams, establishing new standards for police accountability and limitations on qualified immunity that would reshape law enforcement practices nationwide. Olivia received the news while in her office, surrounded by her senior team and Jamal Williams himself. "We won," she said simply, then read aloud from the majority opinion. "The systematic targeting of citizens based on race cannot be reconciled with our Constitution's fundamental guarantees of equal protection and due process." The media response was immediate and far-reaching. Legal journals hailed the decision as the most significant civil rights ruling in decades. News programs featured panels discussing its implications for policing across America. And then came the call from Time magazine requesting an interview and photo shoot for their annual 100 Most Influential People issue. The photo session took place in the Johnson Legal Group's main office, with Olivia in a tailored burgundy suit standing confidently before her team. The triplets and James joined for some of the photos, creating what would become the iconic cover image. Olivia at the center, her family and colleagues arrayed behind her like the support system that had made her success possible. When the issue hit newsstands with the headline "The Voice of America," Olivia bought a copy on her way home, momentarily taken aback by seeing her own face staring back from the glossy cover. That evening, as the family celebrated with a special dinner, a news alert appeared on James's phone. "Whitmore Sr. has died," he said quietly, showing Olivia the business news headline. "Control of Whitmore Industries passes entirely to Maxwell Whitmore III." Olivia absorbed this information silently. She had not allowed herself to think about Maxwell often over the years, focusing instead on building her life and career. Yet this news triggered an unavoidable reflection on how their paths had diverged. She rising to national prominence through hard work and principled advocacy, while he merely inherited the position his birth had destined him for. In the months that followed, financial reports indicated a concerning trend. Whitmore Industries stock had declined steadily under Maxwell's sole leadership, with analysts citing questionable strategic decisions and failure to adapt to changing market conditions. By the spring of 2022, the Johnson Rhodes family moved into a spacious apartment on Park Avenue, their view of Manhattan now from within rather than across the river. The triplets, now approaching their teenage years, had grown into thoughtful, socially conscious young people whose exceptional gifts were matched by their empathy and integrity. From her office in the Johnson Legal Group's new headquarters in Midtown, Olivia could see the Whitmore Industries building across Bryant Park. Standing at the window after a particularly successful settlement negotiation, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here, not just physically from Brooklyn to Manhattan, but from abandoned expectant mother to one of the most respected legal minds in America. As she watched the sunset glint off the Whitmore Industries logo, Olivia thought about the next phase of her strategic plan, a comprehensive class action that would target the parent company directly, challenging decades of discriminatory practices across all its subsidiaries. "We're not finished yet," she whispered to herself, turning back to her desk where the case files awaited her attention. From her window in Midtown, observing the Whitmore Industries building, Olivia didn't know that in just 2 years she would stand face to face with Maxwell again, at a conference where she would be the keynote speaker and he, merely another name on the attendee list. From her office window, Olivia contemplated the Whitmore Industries building, its glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sunlight. The sight no longer triggered pain, only a cool determination that had been simmering for 15 years. The Johnson Legal Group had won case after case against Whitmore subsidiaries, each victory another step toward the ultimate confrontation she had been methodically building toward. January of 2024 arrived with a flurry of activity at the Johnson Legal Group's Midtown headquarters. Olivia called her senior team together for a strategy meeting that would set their course for the coming year. The conference room buzzed with energy as 15 attorneys took their places around the polished oak table. "This is the year," Olivia announced, standing at the head of the table in a tailored emerald suit that complemented her confidence. "We've spent 3 years building the foundation. Now we launch our most ambitious case, a comprehensive class action against Whitmore Industries for systematic discrimination across all their divisions." Her legal director, Marcus Washington, distributed thick binders to everyone present. "We've identified patterns spanning 15 years. Their subsidiaries operate independently on paper, but the discriminatory practices follow identical patterns, too consistent to be coincidental." Olivia nodded, her expression resolute. "This goes beyond individual violations. We're challenging the corporate culture itself, directed from the top down." Later that evening, reviewing personnel files from Whitmore's manufacturing division, Olivia discovered a particularly damning email chain. Senior executives discussed demographic balancing using coded language that barely disguised their intent to maintain white dominance in management positions. "Look at this," she said to James, who had joined her in the home office after putting the triplets to bed. 15 years of documented discrimination and Maxwell's fingerprints are all over it." James studied the highlighted sections, his brow furrowing. "Building this case will take months of preparation. Are you keeping your distance from the front lines again?" "No," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "This time I'm leading personally. It's time." As winter melted into spring, the triplets continued to flourish, their extraordinary gifts developing in ways that sometimes left even Olivia speechless. One April afternoon, she arrived home to find Malcolm surrounded by acceptance letters from prestigious summer programs. Harvard's Advanced Computing Institute and MIT's Mathematics Immersion both accepted me, he announced, his blue eyes, so like Maxwell's, bright with excitement. I can't decide which one to choose. At 14, Malcolm had already published a peer-reviewed paper on algorithmic bias detection. His algorithm for identifying discrimination in hiring practices had caught the attention of tech companies and civil rights organizations alike. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Olivia said, embracing him proudly. "Either program would be lucky to have you." Martin appeared from his bedroom, laptop in hand. "Mom, can you watch my TED Talk rehearsal? I need to time it properly." Where Malcolm excelled in abstract mathematical concepts, Martin had developed a passion for practical applications of technology for social justice. His app, Justice Access, had been downloaded over 30,000 times, providing legal information to underserved communities in 12 languages. "The final recording is next week," he explained, setting up his presentation. "It's for the TED Youth Conference on how technology can democratize legal protection." Olivia watched as Martin, normally quiet and thoughtful, transformed into a confident speaker, articulating complex ideas about technology and justice with remarkable clarity. His passion was evident in every carefully chosen word, every deliberate gesture. From the kitchen came the sound of Maya's voice, clear and commanding as she led a virtual meeting of her youth organization. At 14, she had founded Youth for Judicial Reform, a national movement of teenagers advocating for changes to the justice system. "We need representatives from at least 30 states for the congressional briefing," Maya was saying, her leadership qualities evident even through the computer screen. "Our data on juvenile sentencing disparities is compelling, but personal stories from diverse communities will make it impossible to ignore." Pride swelled in Olivia's chest as she moved between her children's activities, witnessing the extraordinary people they were becoming. Each had inherited her determination and sense of justice, channeling these qualities into their unique paths. That evening, as Olivia reviewed her notes for an upcoming deposition, her phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line caused her heart to skip. "American Bar Association Annual Conference. Keynote Speaker Invitation." The email was effusive. "Your groundbreaking work in civil rights litigation and historic Supreme Court victory have transformed American jurisprudence. We would be honored to have you deliver the keynote address at this year's conference in September." Olivia read the message twice, a smile spreading across her face. The ABA conference was the most prestigious gathering in the legal profession, attended by Supreme Court justices, legal scholars, and the nation's top attorneys. Being invited as keynote speaker represented the highest recognition of her contributions to the field. As she scrolled through the details, a name on the preliminary attendee list caught her eye. Maxwell Whitmore III, CEO, Whitmore Industries. Her fingers froze over the screen. Of course, the consent decree from their previous lawsuit required Whitmore Industries to participate in diversity and inclusion programs, including the ABA's Corporate Accountability Panel. Maxwell would be obligated to attend. After 15 years, they would be in the same room again. James found her still staring at the screen minutes later. "Olivia? Everything okay?" She wordlessly handed him the phone, watching as understanding dawned on his face. "Maxwell will be there," he said softly, returning the device. "How do you feel about that?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "I'm not that scared, pregnant girl he dismissed anymore. I've built something he couldn't imagine." She took a deep breath. "And honestly, I'm curious to see his face when he realizes who the keynote speaker is." Throughout May and June, Olivia divided her attention between preparing the Whitmore Industries class action and crafting her keynote address. The speech needed to transcend her personal journey, focusing instead on the structural barriers to justice and the legal framework for dismantling them. Yet she couldn't help infusing it with the hard-won wisdom of her own experience. On a warm evening in late June, as Olivia and James took their regular run through Central Park, she voiced a concern that had been growing in her mind. "Should I tell the triplets about the conference? About the possibility of seeing Maxwell?" James slowed their pace, considering the question with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "They're 14 now, increasingly aware of the world. Have you thought about what you'll do if they want to attend?" "I've been avoiding that particular scenario," Olivia admitted. "They know their biological father chose not to be part of their lives, but they don't know his name, his position, what he looks like." "Would seeing him benefit them in any way?" James asked. Olivia shook her head. "I don't think so, but they've never seen me give a major address. They've been asking to attend more professional events as they consider their own futures. The question remained unresolved as summer progressed. Olivia tested different approaches in her keynote draft, seeking the perfect balance between personal narrative and legal analysis. The Whitmore Industries case grew stronger as more evidence emerged of coordinated discriminatory practices across multiple subsidiaries. By August, with the conference just weeks away, Maya approached Olivia one evening as she worked in her home office. "Mom, we've been talking. Malcolm, Martin and I," she began, her expression serious. "We know your ABA keynote is a big deal. We'd like to be there." Olivia set down her pen, studying her daughter's face. At 14, Maya had developed the poised confidence of someone much older, her articulate speech and thoughtful manner reminiscent of Olivia herself at a much later age. "It's an adult professional conference," Olivia replied carefully. "Most of it would be quite boring for you." Maya's smile was knowing. "We're not exactly typical teenagers, Mom. Besides, Malcolm is interested in the panel on algorithmic bias in legal technology. Martin wants to connect with the Access to Justice initiatives, and I've been following the juvenile justice reform discussions for months." Faced with such reasoned arguments and recognizing that her children were indeed exceptional, Olivia found herself reconsidering. Perhaps their presence would be fitting after all, a visual representation of what she had built despite Maxwell's rejection. "I'll speak with your father and make arrangements," she conceded. The next morning, over breakfast, Olivia discussed the triplets' request with James. "They make compelling arguments," he acknowledged, "and they're mature enough to handle a professional conference. The question is, are you prepared for them to potentially be in the same room as Maxwell Whitmore?" Olivia stared into her coffee, considering the implications. "He wouldn't recognize them. He's never seen them, has no idea what they look like." She looked up, meeting James's concerned gaze. "And they wouldn't know him either." "Unless they make the connection," James pointed out gently. "They have your intelligence and perception. If they hear his name, see his face, they might put it together." The possibility hung in the air between them, fraught with potential consequences Olivia couldn't fully predict. As September approached, preparations for both the conference and the Whitmore Industries lawsuit intensified. Olivia rehearsed her keynote speech for her senior team, refining points about systemic discrimination and the judiciary's evolving understanding of equal protection. Meanwhile, the final evidence for the class action was assembled, ready for filing immediately after the conference. 1 week before the event, Olivia took the triplets shopping for appropriate attire. As Maya tried on a sophisticated navy dress that highlighted her graceful bearing, Olivia was struck by how much she resembled both her parents. Olivia's warm brown complexion and facial structure combined with the striking blue eyes that marked her Whitmore heritage. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said, emotion catching in her throat. "Do you think people will take me seriously in this?" Maya asked, smoothing the fabric. "I want to look professional. Trust me, no one who speaks with you for 30 seconds will question your seriousness," Olivia assured her. For herself, Olivia selected a deep crimson suit with subtle gold accessories, powerful without being ostentatious, a visual statement of authority and confidence. The night before the conference, she laid it out carefully, considering how different it was from the simple blue dress she had worn to Maxwell's penthouse 15 years earlier. That evening, the family gathered in the living room to review Olivia's speech one final time. Malcolm, Martin, and Maya listened attentively, occasionally offering thoughtful suggestions to strengthen specific points. "You should emphasize the data on how diverse judicial appointments affect case outcomes," Malcolm suggested. "The statistical correlation is undeniable. And maybe mention how technology can both perpetuate and combat discrimination," Martin added. "It's a tool, shaped by the values of those who design it." Maya's contribution was characteristically perceptive. "The personal anecdote about your first discrimination case makes the legal principles feel urgent and real. Don't cut that part." As Olivia incorporated their suggestions, She was struck by the poetic justice of the moment. Her children, whose existence Maxwell had rejected, helping to perfect the speech she would deliver while he sat in the audience, unaware of their connection. "I'm proud of all of you," she said, looking at each of their faces in turn. "More than you can possibly know." Later that night, as James slept peacefully beside her, Olivia found herself wide awake, contemplating the approaching conference. She wasn't nervous about her speech. After arguing before the Supreme Court, a keynote address held little terror. No, her restlessness stemmed from the knowledge that Maxwell would be there, watching her without recognizing the woman he had once discarded. In the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Olivia considered what the encounter might reveal. Not about Maxwell, whom she had long ago stopped trying to understand, but about herself. How much of her drive had been fueled by the desire to prove him wrong? How much of her success was a response to his rejection? On the eve of the conference, reviewing her speech one last time, Olivia didn't realize how the encounter of the following day would not only close a 15-year circle but would also open a new chapter in the lives of the triplets and seal Maxwell Whitmore's fate definitively. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Johnson Rhodes family's Park Avenue apartment, casting golden rectangles across the polished hardwood floors. Olivia stood before the full-length mirror in her bedroom, smoothing the lapels of her crimson suit. The color was bold, unapologetic, a stark contrast to the timid navy dress she had worn that snowy night 15 years ago when Maxwell had dismissed her from his life. "You look magnificent," James said, appearing in the doorway. He approached and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Ready to make history again?" Olivia smiled, drawing strength from his unwavering support. "As ready as I'll ever be." The sound of excited chatter drew them into the hallway, where the triplets were assembled in their carefully chosen outfits. Malcolm in a charcoal suit that accentuated his lanky frame, Martin in navy blue with a subtle patterned tie, and Maya in the sophisticated dress that made her look far older than her 14 years. "The Johnson Three reporting for duty," Malcolm announced with a grin. Olivia felt her heart swell with pride as she regarded them, these extraordinary children who had defied every obstacle, beginning with their premature birth. They stood tall and confident, unaware that today they would occupy the same space as the man who had rejected them before they'd drawn their first breath. "Remember," she said, gathering her portfolio, "this conference is full of the country's top legal minds. Many of them will be interested in meeting you, especially after the Time magazine cover." "Will there be Supreme Court justices there?" Maya asked, excitement brightening her eyes. "At least 3, from what I've heard." The sleek town car waited at the curb, the driver holding the door as the family filed in. As they glided through Manhattan's morning traffic toward the Javits Center, Olivia reviewed her speech one final time, though she had committed every word to memory. Inside the massive convention center, the atmosphere buzzed with the energy of 3,000 legal professionals gathered for the prestigious annual conference. Heads turned as the Johnson Rhodes family made their entrance, whispers of recognition following in their wake. Olivia's Time magazine cover had made her instantly recognizable, and the presence of the triplets, whose achievements had been noted in the profile, added to the interest. "Dr. Johnson Rhodes," called the ABA president, hurrying over to greet them. "We're so honored to have you as our keynote speaker, and these must be the famous triplets. Our staff has prepared a VIP area where they can wait during the preliminary sessions." As Olivia was whisked away for a pre-speech briefing, the triplets were escorted to a comfortable lounge area reserved for speakers' families and distinguished guests. From there, they could observe the main hall filling with attendees without being overwhelmed by the crowd. Maxwell Whitmore III arrived at the Javits Center precisely 47 minutes before the keynote address was scheduled to begin. At 45, his once youthful face now showed the strain of recent years, fine lines radiating from his eyes, a permanent furrow etched between his brows. His custom-tailored suit hung slightly loose on his frame, evidence of weight lost to stress rather than exercise. He checked his Rolex Platinum with impatience as he joined the registration line. Being here was a necessary humiliation, part of the consent decree following that damnable discrimination lawsuit. 3 days of diversity and inclusion panels, networking with people who knew his company had lost the case, pretending to be committed to change. The sooner he fulfilled this obligation, the sooner he could return to the increasingly difficult task of stabilizing Whitmore Industries' declining market position. "Name?" asked the board volunteer at the registration desk. "Whitmore, Maxwell Whitmore III, Whitmore Industries." Recognition flickered in the young woman's eyes, not the respectful acknowledgement he once would have expected, but something closer to discomfort. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore. Your badge is right here. You're seated in Section C, Row 3 for the keynote." Maxwell took the badge without thanks and made his way into the main hall, finding his assigned seat with irritation. Row 3 was closer to the stage than he would have preferred. He had planned to sit near the back, check his emails during the speech, and slip out as soon as professionally possible. The corporate accountability panel he was required to attend wasn't until the afternoon. He glanced at the program, curious despite himself about the keynote speaker who warranted such prominent placement. The name printed in bold letters stopped his breath. Dr. Olivia Johnson Rhodes, founder and CEO, Johnson Legal Group. Johnson. The name triggered a distant memory, but he couldn't immediately place it. Someone he'd crossed paths with professionally, perhaps? There were so many lawyers in his world. The lights dimmed as the ABA president approached the podium to introduce the speaker. Maxwell settled back in his seat, pulling out his phone to check Whitmore Industries' stock price, down another 2% since yesterday. "With great honor," announced the president, her voice filling the hall, "we present our keynote speaker, whose historic victory in the Supreme Court in the case of Williams versus State of New York revolutionized the American criminal justice system, Dr. Olivia Johnson Rhodes." Polite applause filled the room as Maxwell glanced up from his phone. A striking woman in a deep crimson suit walked confidently to the stage, followed by 3 teenagers. Something about her triggered a deeper recognition, the way she moved, perhaps, or the set of her shoulders. And then she turned to face the audience, and Maxwell felt the blood drain from his face. Olivia. The woman he had dismissed from his penthouse 15 years ago, pregnant and pleading. The woman he had erased from his personal history so completely that he'd forgotten her last name was Johnson. She looked nothing like the young associate he remembered. This woman radiated power and confidence, her skin glowing with health, her posture regal. The simple gold jewelry she wore complemented her deep brown skin, and her natural hair formed a crown of tight coils framing her face perfectly. Maxwell's gaze shifted involuntarily to the 3 teenagers who had followed her onto the stage. They appeared to be the same age, triplets, his mind supplied belatedly. 2 boys and a girl, all with light brown skin and striking features that seemed hauntingly familiar. As the girl turned to retrieve a water bottle for Olivia, Maxwell saw her eyes, a distinctive blue that had marked Whitmore descendants for generations, the same blue that stared back at him from his mirror each morning. The realization hit him with physical force. These were his children, the triplets Olivia had been carrying when he'd cast her out of his life. They had grown into teenagers without him ever seeing their faces. Distinguished colleagues, honored justices, fellow advocates for equality, Olivia began, her voice strong and melodious, filling the hall without apparent effort. We gather today at a pivotal moment in our nation's ongoing struggle to align our practices with our principles. Maxwell barely heard the words. His attention remained fixed on the 3 teenagers seated in chairs behind the podium. The boys, what were their names, had his height, his jawline. The girl had his mother's cheekbones. All 3 carried themselves with a quiet dignity that reminded him of his own father, though they could never have met him. As Olivia spoke eloquently about the evolution of civil rights jurisprudence, illustrating abstract principles with compelling human stories, Maxwell observed the respect on the faces around him. These weren't the polite expressions of people humoring a diversity speaker. This was the rapt attention given to a true authority. "Justice is not an abstraction," Olivia continued, her gaze sweeping the audience. "It is realized or denied in specific moments of human interaction. When an employer makes a hiring decision, when an officer decides to draw a weapon, when a judge determines a sentence." For a brief moment, her eyes seemed to meet Maxwell's, though he couldn't be certain she had recognized him. Did she know he would be here? Had she orchestrated this moment of revelation? The speech continued for 45 minutes, culminating in a vision of American jurisprudence that recognized its historical failures while charting a path toward true equality. When Olivia finished, the audience rose as one in a standing ovation that continued for nearly 3 minutes. Maxwell remained seated, his mind racing. These children, his children, had grown up without him, apparently thriving. The Time magazine cover, the Supreme Court victory, the prestigious law firm bearing her name. Olivia had built all this while raising his children, after he had dismissed her as too ambitious, too black, too Brooklyn. During the reception that followed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Maxwell stationed himself near the bar, nursing his third Macallan 25 while watching Olivia from across the room. She moved easily among Supreme Court justices, senators, and CEOs, clearly comfortable in the highest echelons of American power. The teenagers, his children, were equally at ease, engaged in animated conversations with distinguished guests. The girl appeared to be discussing something with the governor of New York, who was nodding with genuine interest. The boys were speaking with a group that included 2 federal judges and the dean of Harvard Law School. Liquid courage finally propelled Maxwell across the room. He approached during a rare moment when Olivia stood alone, waiting for a fresh glass of sparkling water from a passing server. "Olivia," he said, his voice lower than he intended, almost a whisper. She turned, and for a microsecond, surprise flashed across her features before her expression settled into one of polite neutrality, the face one might present to a distant acquaintance at a professional gathering. "Maxwell Whitmore," she replied evenly, as though encountering a former colleague she hadn't thought about in years. "I didn't expect to see you here." The casual dismissal in her tone cut deeper than any angry confrontation would have. She was acknowledging their past connection while simultaneously establishing its insignificance. "Your speech was impressive," he managed, eyes drifting toward the triplets across the room. "They are—" He swallowed hard, searching for words adequate to the moment. "Magnificent. They are everything you rejected that December night," she replied calmly, taking a sip of her water. "When you chose your privilege over your humanity." Maxwell flinched at the precision of the blow. "I was young, foolish, influenced by my parents," he began, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. These were excuses he had rehearsed in his mind during rare moments of reflection over 15 years of determined forgetting. "And they?" Olivia gestured toward the triplets. "They were also young, brand new. They never needed you." "I could make up for lost time," Maxwell suggested, reaching for his wallet in an instinctive gesture. "Whitmore Industries may be facing temporary difficulties, but we still have substantial resources." Olivia laughed, a genuinely amused sound that drew curious glances from nearby guests. "Your net worth is what currently, Maxwell? 300 million after the market losses and legal settlements?" "Interesting." Before he could respond, one of the boys, the slightly taller one, approached them. "Mom, the president just called. He's confirmed your name for the Supreme Court." Maxwell felt the room tilt slightly. "Supreme Court?" "Oh, it hasn't been announced yet," Olivia smiled, accepting a champagne flute from her husband, Senator Rhodes, who had materialized at her side. "But yes, the nomination will be official next week." The other boy and the girl joined the group, looking curiously at the stranger conversing with their mother. "Children," Olivia said with remarkable composure, "this is Maxwell Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Industries. Mr. Whitmore, these are my children, Malcolm, Martin, and Maya. The triplets, his children, examined Maxwell with polite curiosity, no recognition in their expressions, no connection evident in their manner. "You have my family's eyes," Maxwell blurted, immediately regretting the words. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. The more thoughtful-looking boy, Martin, Olivia had called him, connected the dots first. His expression shifted from confusion to sudden clarity. "You're him," he said simply. The man who wasn't ready. Understanding spread across the faces of the other two. Maxwell opened his mouth to speak, but Malcolm interrupted, handing him a business card embossed with the presidential seal. "While you were building walls, Mom was building bridges, and that's why America chose her, not you." While journalists rushed to document this historic encounter, none of them realized they were witnessing not just a professional triumph, but the completion of a 15-year journey from rejection to vindication that would forever alter the trajectories of everyone involved. The buzz of smartphones erupted across the media section of the Metropolitan Museum almost in unison, creating a wave of electronic chirps that rippled through the elegant reception. Reporters who had been documenting the ABA gala suddenly huddled over their devices, eyes widening as they absorbed the breaking news. Within moments, their collective gaze shifted toward Olivia and the triplets, who were still standing with a visibly shaken Maxwell Whitmore. "Dr. Johnson Rhodes," called out a reporter from the Washington Post, breaking protocol by approaching the restricted VIP section. "Can you comment on the White House's announcement regarding your Supreme Court nomination?" Maxwell's face paled further as the significance of what was happening crystallized around him. The leak had come sooner than expected, turning what should have been a private humiliation into a public spectacle. "I'll provide a formal statement tomorrow," Olivia replied smoothly, her composure unruffled. "Tonight is about the American Bar Association and its vital work." By morning, Olivia's nomination to the Supreme Court dominated every news outlet in America. The New York Times featured her photograph beneath the headline, "Civil Rights Champion Nominated to Supreme Court." The Wall Street Journal analyzed her jurisprudence philosophy with the headline, "Johnson Rhodes Nomination Signals Progressive Court Shift." Even People magazine had rushed a special online feature, "The Extraordinary Journey of Olivia Johnson Rhodes, from Single Mother of Triplets to Supreme Court Nominee." In his penthouse office at Whitmore Industries, Maxwell stared at the coverage on multiple screens, a tumbler of Macallan in his hand despite the early hour. The whiskey burned his throat, offering momentary distraction from the relentless news cycle that seemed designed specifically to torment him. His phone had not stopped ringing since 7 that morning. The board wanted an emergency meeting. Financial analysts demanded statements about the Johnson Legal Group's newly filed class action lawsuit against Whitmore Industries, a bombshell that had dropped simultaneously with Olivia's nomination. His current fiancée, Alessandra, had called 6 times after a reporter contacted her asking for comment about Mr. Whitmore's previously undisclosed children. As if summoned by his thoughts, Alessandra's name illuminated his phone screen again. Maxwell silenced it without answering, turning instead to the email that had arrived 10 minutes earlier from the Johnson Legal Group. The message was not from Olivia herself, but from her chief litigation counsel. "Mr. Whitmore, in anticipation of inevitable media inquiries, we wish to clarify the terms of our understanding. Dr. Johnson Rhodes has no intention of publicly discussing your past relationship or the paternity of the triplets. However, should you choose to make any public statement, we have extensive documentation of the 2009 rejection and abandonment, including the confidentiality agreement subsequently sent. We trust your discretion in this sensitive matter." No explicit threat, just the clear message. She didn't need to destroy him. She would simply allow him to destroy himself if he chose that path. Maxwell closed the email and switched to a financial news channel where analysts were dissecting Whitmore Industries' plummeting stock price. "Down 17% since market opening," reported the commentator, as investors react to the class action lawsuit filed by the Johnson Legal Group alleging 15 years of systematic discrimination practices. This comes at a particularly vulnerable time for Whitmore Industries, which has seen declining performance since Maxwell Whitmore III assumed full control following his father's death 2 years ago. The bitter irony was not lost on Maxwell. For 15 years, he had succeeded in burying the memory of that snowy December night, convincing himself that he had made the right choice for his family legacy and corporate empire. Now, as that empire crumbled around him, he was forced to confront the reality that Olivia had built something more valuable, more lasting than anything bearing the Whitmore name. 2 weeks later, the Senate Judiciary Committee convened for Olivia's confirmation hearings. The triplets were constant presences, poised and articulate as they supported their mother through the grueling process. Media fascination with them had intensified following the revelation of their paternity, but they handled the attention with remarkable grace. From his apartment, where he had retreated after the board placed him on administrative leave, Maxwell watched Maya's CNN interview with Anderson Cooper. Some might wonder if you feel any desire to connect with your biological father now that his identity is public knowledge, Cooper asked carefully. Maya's response was measured, her composure striking for a 14-year-old. "We've had a wonderful childhood. Our mother has always been our hero, and Senator Rhodes has been an amazing father since he entered our lives when we were 4 years old. Family isn't about biology. It's about who chooses to love you, support you, and show up for you every day." The camera cut briefly to Olivia and James in the background, their proud expressions revealing more than words could express. Maxwell found himself unable to look away, transfixed by this family that existed because of his rejection, yet had flourished despite it, perhaps even because of it. "Our mother always told us that our biological father wasn't ready to be a parent," Maya continued. "We respect that choice and the life we've built without him." The grace with which she delivered what amounted to a public dismissal of Maxwell's relevance to their lives cut deeper than any angry condemnation could have. She hadn't attacked him. She had simply confirmed his insignificance. As days passed, Maxwell's isolation deepened. His engagement to Alessandra imploded spectacularly after she discovered what she called his significant omission regarding 3 children he had never acknowledged. The board's investigation into the discrimination allegations uncovered patterns that made his position increasingly untenable. His mansion in the Hamptons was quietly listed for sale to cover mounting legal costs and personal financial losses. After Olivia's confirmation by an 86-14 vote in the Senate, Maxwell's restraint finally broke. In a moment of alcohol-fueled impulse, he sent a text message to the number he had obtained through corporate channels. "Congratulations, you've achieved everything you dreamed of. Could you at least give me a chance to know them?" The response came hours later, after he had fallen into restless sleep. "Maxwell, this isn't about revenge. It's about choices. You made yours 15 years ago. They've made theirs now. Respect that." The morning of Olivia's swearing-in ceremony at the Supreme Court dawned clear and crisp in Washington, D.C. The historic occasion was broadcast live across all major networks, capturing the moment when she placed her hand on the Bible held by James, the triplet standing proudly nearby as she took the oath that would make her the youngest justice on the current court. The cameras lingered briefly on Malcolm, Martin, and Maya during the ceremony, their poised presence adding to the compelling visual narrative of this remarkable American success story. Maxwell, watching alone in his increasingly empty apartment, saw for the first time with painful clarity what he had truly lost. Not merely a beautiful wife, not merely talented children, not merely a legal empire, but the chance to be part of something larger than himself. After the ceremony, in the Johnson Road's new Georgetown home, Olivia finally removed the last vestige of Maxwell from her life. From a small wooden box kept in the back of her closet, she withdrew an old photograph. She and Maxwell standing in front of Trump Plaza in happier times, his arm around her waist, both smiling at a future they thought they would share. "You still keep that?" James asked, finding her as she contemplated the image one last time. "Not because I miss him," Olivia answered honestly, perhaps out of gratitude. If he had been even halfway decent, I might have settled for an ordinary life. His abandonment forced me to be extraordinary. She placed the photo in the recycling bin, closing that chapter definitively. Meanwhile, in his Manhattan apartment, Maxwell Whitmore stared out at the city lights, holding the business card Malcolm had handed him at the gala, the one with the presidential seal. The television murmured in the background, announcing that Whitmore Industries stock had fallen another 12% following the news that the Johnson Legal Group would represent the federal government in a major antitrust case against tech monopolies, including several Whitmore subsidiaries. In that moment of clarity, Maxwell finally understood. True power had never resided in the Whitmore name, the money, or the connections. It had always been in the inner strength he had glimpsed in Olivia from the beginning, the same strength he had feared, rejected, and now, too late, admired. The most devastating realization was that justice had not come through revenge or public humiliation, but in the most crushing form possible: complete indifference. Olivia Johnson Rhodes had built a world where she not only survived without Maxwell Whitmore, she had thrived to the point of making him utterly irrelevant, and that, more than any public disgrace could have achieved, cemented his absolute defeat. On the morning of her first day on the Supreme Court, Justice Olivia Johnson Rhodes woke before dawn, the weight of history and responsibility settling on her shoulders like a familiar cloak. As she prepared for the day ahead, her thoughts turned not to Maxwell or the past, but to the cases waiting for her attention, the opinions she would write, and the constitutional principles she would help shape for generations to come. The journey that had begun in pain and rejection had led to this moment of profound purpose. As she straightened her judicial robe and prepared to leave, Malcolm, Martin, and Maya presented her with a small gift, a custom-made fountain pen inscribed with the words, "Equal justice under law." "To write the next chapter," Maya said simply. Olivia embraced her children, these extraordinary young people who had been her strength and inspiration from the beginning. Whatever Maxwell might be feeling in his diminished world across town no longer mattered. Their story had transcended him completely. As the Johnson Rhodes family departed for the Supreme Court, they embodied an American journey of perseverance, excellence, and justice that would inspire others for generations. While Maxwell Whitmore faded into the footnotes of history, remembered only as the man who had made the mistake of underestimating Olivia Johnson. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.